welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here today to do a new releases reading vlog. So what with every new year, I love to try to at least catch up on some new releases. I am very behind on a lot of books I want to read, so when I can read some new releases, I want to make sure I do it. So this vlog, you can expect reviews for The Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake. This is the third and I think final book in the Atlas Six. The Atlas Six follows a group of 6 college-age students who each individually have their own set of powers, and they are sort of roped into joining the Alexandrian Society, full of prestige and power. Of course, the Alexandrian Society only accepts 5 students, so the 6 of them at the end of the year will have to choose one to go. I've been really looking forward to this one, so I managed to pick up a copy and read it. After that, I picked up The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is Leigh Bardugo's foray, I guess, into historical fantasy. I love historical fantasy. This one follows a main character named Lucia, and Lucia is a maid for a sort of well-off family, but she's able to perform little miracles. However, one day the lady of the house, Valentina, discovers that Lucia is able to do these little miracles and wants to use her to her advantage in order to uphold her family in society. The story sort of takes off when Lucia grabs the attention of the Secretary of Spain's king, who convinces her to join this tourney in order to compete for the role of protecting the King of Spain. And then finally, I read House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is, again, I think the finale of the Crescent City series, but it basically follows a character named Bryce Quinlan, and she is paired with this angel named Hunt Athalar, and they are tasked with solving a murder in the Crescent City. It's a very simple synopsis of the first book, and obviously, given that each individual book is 1,000 pages, the story has expanded greatly up until this point. So I will take you back to Kelsey 1 month ago as she started this vlog, and we'll see each other at the end for a nice little summary of the video. Hello, so hopefully I did a better introduction to this vlog. The book I decided to start with is The Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake. This is the third and final book in the Atlas Six trilogy. Definitely one of my favorite trilogies so far. The Atlas Six was one of my best books the year I read it. It was probably 2022. Then last year I read The Atlas Paradox. It was a solid 4 stars, still really good. And I was counting on The Atlas Complex to be amazing, rounding out the trilogy really well. The Atlas Six follows obviously 6 individuals who are sort of recruited to be part of this Alexandrian Society by a man named Atlas Blakely. They are recruited because they are the best of what they do. So some of the characters are physicists, which means they can change the anatomy or the structure of things. A couple of others are able to telepathically control people, read people's minds. You get the gist of it. They are sort of recruited because they are able to do these fantastical things. We learn in the last 2 books that obviously, as expected, the Alexandrian Society is not what was expected, and there's a lot of underlying issues amongst the previous members of the society and the current members of this society, as they are all sort of ruthless individuals who want to be a part of this society no matter what. And I think that that's really crucial to remember, that these characters are not particularly nice. They are all encompassing bad sort of individuals, even though we follow, I would argue, relatively good ones like Libby, Nico, and Tristan. But we have to remember that they are not, right? Libby does something astronomically horrible at the end of the previous book in order to return to the Alexandrian Society, to her current world. Without diving too much into spoilers, obviously, they're not the best people, and Libby is really struggling with that in the first quarter of the book. Where I'm currently at page 75, but I did want to give an update before I go to a bachelorette weekend this weekend. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I will be continuing to read this. The amount that I update might be fairly limited, but I am really enjoying this, and I went to look up the rating for this book, and it is a 2.91, which I can't even understand, because obviously the first 2 books were so good and I really enjoyed them, and I really enjoyed the setting and the discussions that were being had and the plot that was happening. That to then look at the last book as a 2.91, people vehemently hate this. A lot of people that I follow and are friends with have given this 1 star. I don't even understand how to process this. So far I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying where we're at, the discussions we're having. I literally regret looking at that rating because I'm like now reading this with like, what did everybody hate? Why did people hate this? I need to discover why. I'm gonna continue reading this. We'll see how I feel. I will come and update probably when I'm at the 200 page mark. So in 125 pages relatively. Hello, so I wanted to give an update for the Atlas Complex because I finally reached page 200 after putting this off for a bit. I'm still really enjoying this. I think I can sort of figure out where maybe the disappreciation of this book could be. And I do think it's in Libby's drastic character change. And I think if you haven't read this series, then you wouldn't know that Libby starts off at least as one of the more like sweeter characters, the more innocent characters. And she goes through something pretty tragic, pretty horrific, and feels sort of like a pawn for the men that surround them in the system. The system, of course, being this like Alexandrian society and the societies that are combating the Alexandrian society. And it's sort of getting to Libby's head because she's also a character of great insecurity. So she's very, very insecure about her role in the Alexandrian society, her position amongst her peers, how powerful she is compared to her other peers. So we definitely see this struggle that Libby's having and her disillusion of doing the right thing. She sort of wants to raise hell in a way. And I think that that's very compelling. I find that to be probably one of the more compelling aspects of the book because I genuinely enjoy Libby's character. And so to see her have this more nihilistic, disillusioned perspective of the world has been incredibly interesting. As for the other characters, I don't really care what's going on with them. And I think that that might be another aspect as to why this book is definitely one of the more weaker ones. In the first two books, I genuinely cared what was going on with each individual character, their plot points, their story points, how they were growing. And in this one, I just couldn't care less. There's a lot of like text messages like this between Callum and Tristan, and I just don't care. I don't care what's going on with Rina. Parisa's story is fairly interesting, but of course she has been the most interesting character, I think, from the beginning. Nico, Tristan, Gideon's stories, aside from how they affect Libby, I just don't really care. And so I could see that being how this book will go down and how it has received lower ratings. Not to have the ratings in mind, of course, but it's just like when you see such a low rating, like 2.91 stars, like that's crazy to me. So I'm definitely like reading this with a different eye. I didn't expect it to be that low. So that means this is greatly disappointing. So I can't help it. That's where I am right now, and I've been putting off reading it, I think, but I am enjoying it as it is right now. So I'm going to continue reading it until I have to go out, and we'll see what happens. Hello, so I'm currently lying down in bed watching some YouTube videos while I wake up. Please excuse someone enjoying their delicious snacks, but I think instead I'm going to start the third Crescent City book, House of Flame and Shadow, just to have some variation between this and the Atlas 6. I think I'm going to read it au naturel. I'm going to read it with my eyeballs, and that way I can move between this one and the Atlas Complex. Sorry, I keep calling it the Atlas 6, but it's the third book. It's the finale. So I think I'm going to start that right now. I'm just in the mood for it, I guess. See ya. Hello. So let's give an update on what I've read. So yesterday I did in fact finish the Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake. I just sped through the last like 200 pages just because I wanted to finish it, and I'll get into this in my review, but it was a little convoluted for me. While I did not take as much issues with this as other reviewers, like I definitely didn't give this a 1 star, I was still left a little disappointed when finishing the book. I feel like I was really along for the ride in the first half, and I think I made that clear. Like I was enjoying it. I wasn't sure exactly why people didn't like this book. I didn't comprehend the more negative reviews because I felt like it was a typical Atlas 6 book. The story felt familiar, it was making sense to me, and I was really enjoying the more darker themes that were coming to light. And so I wasn't understanding why people had such an issue or took such an issue with the more darker aspects of the book. As with this entire series, my favorite element of this book, and as with the other books, is the characters. I've grown really attached to them, so like anything that they say or do, I'm obsessed with, and so that's why there's a lot of tabs and a lot of like discussions that I was having with myself while reading. And as usual, Blake's writing is really beautiful and lyrical, but I think this time around it sort of worked as a detriment to the book. I was really confused by the plot overall. When finishing the book, I had to read like multiple summaries to make sure that I was understanding what happened. And I wanted to make sure specifically that I understood the ending, because it couldn't be ending the way I thought it was ending, right? But it did. I really do think that what Olivia Blake did with Libby's character in particular, and the other characters as well, and their ideas of their own like godhood and grandeur was interesting, but it definitely became more muddled as the story went on, because there was just so much action and so many things happening at the end that it became just confusing, and I didn't really like comprehend exactly how it ended. So that's why I had to read those summaries. So I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. I don't think it was as bad as I expected it to be based on the rating, but it definitely is the weaker of the trilogy, and that leaves me a bit disappointed that it was the finale. And then that makes me a little apprehensive, because the next book I'm starting, or I started, is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas. If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I have a love and hate relationship with Sarah J Maas. The A Court of Thorns and Roses series definitely got me back into reading like 10 years ago, when I was coming back to it outside of university and I was reading for fun again. And I definitely fell in love with that world and that series. However, outside of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, I have a lot of issues with Sarah J Maas's writings, especially because Throne of Glass is a series that has ended. So I've seen how the larger the book is, the less editing that Sarah J Maas has done, and her characters become a little convoluted. And I felt the same with the last book in this series, with the Crescent City series. This series is not particularly my favorite. It follows a character named Bryce Quinlan, who is half fae, half human, and the world that she comes from is a urban fantasy setting. So they have like faes and werewolves, mermen, stuff like that, but they have like cell phones technology. The story sort of kicks off when Bryce is paired with this angel named Hunt, and they are sort of tasked together in order to solve the murder of one of Bryce's friends. And that's like the gist of the first Crescent City book. Obviously, where we're at in this series, as you can see, the novels are really long. Like, a lot has happened. So I'm going to try to do my best not to exactly spoil the novel, but Bryce's character is not where she originally was at the beginning of the series. So at this point in the novel, Bryce is in another fae realm. You can put two and two together if you want. And she is sort of having to navigate this new realm and working with one of the characters named Nesta to sort of solve why perhaps Bryce has been transported into that realm. At the same time, there are other things going on in the original city that Bryce is from. So like, her boyfriend has been captured and is being tortured by the Asteri. We learned a lot about the Asteri and their like leadership and how they control the different realms in a way. And then there's also a side plot with like Therion, which is this merman, Sigrid, which is this like new alpha werewolf. There's a lot of POVs, there's a lot going on. I did not particularly enjoy the last book for that reason. I just felt like a lot was happening that did not need to happen. And that's one of my major critiques of A House of Sky and Breath, which was the second book. So I'm already 100 or so pages in, 120 pages in, and it's very like typical. One thing I can give Sarah J Maas is that once you enter her realms, like, you just feel like you belong there. Like, the story is very comforting. So I know where I am in the story. I don't feel like I ever need to reread the series, and I will be reading that physically. I do also have The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo to pick up, but I don't think I will be picking that up anytime soon. This is going to be read by audio, so I'm going to try to focus more on House of Flame and Shadow, as I need to read this physically, and lately I've been struggling reading things physically, and I do want to get this vlog out, so this is like my #1 priority. Hello, so I am currently working. It is 3:35 p.m. Took a fresh shower at lunchtime. I'm making some tomato sauce, and I figured I will update you on where I'm at with House of Flame and Shadow. I am now at part 2, so that is page 270. We're starting the second portion of the book, the second third. My thoughts on the matter are pretty much exactly how I expect it to feel. It's definitely not keeping my attention in the most ways. Very boring, very long-winded, and that is just due to the amount of, I personally feel, unnecessary details in the book. This first portion of the novel was focused on the like lore and the background of the world that Bryce ends up in and the world that she comes from and the evil entity of the Asteri that have been navigating through both. But because it is so long-winded, so boring, and the details aren't truly like solidified, in my opinion, I don't really care about what's happening. I just feel like my past experience with Sarah J Maas and what this book is reminding me, the unnecessary details don't really matter. And our protagonist is going to find a way to solve the issue despite dealing with a very powerful, like, overlordy figure. Additionally, a lot of the point of view characters in the book I don't feel like are truly necessary, and I don't see how they're going to add up in the final instance. I really hope that Therion's chapters and the chapters with the like group of werewolves works out or ends up having some sort of connection to the finale, but I highly doubt it. Am I sounding bitter? Yes, but just based on every single finale I've read from Sarah J Maas, I know that they won't matter. They might have like a slight little thing, but it could have been added in to one of the main perspectives. Speaking of one of the main perspectives, Hunt's perspective is still very strong. That is Bryce's mate. I really thought that they were not going to be together. I'm a little disappointed. I really think that my expectations for this novel and my expectations for the plot are a lot more convoluted and better than Sarah J Maas's. Speaking of Hunt's perspective, there's nothing really to develop there because they're trapped in a cage. Umbra Mortis is mentioned 7 times on one page that I read, and that was when I put the book down last night. Thank God it was the end of the first part because I was like, I can't believe how many times this word is being used. They speak a lot about Lydia. Lydia is the Hunt. She is one of the Asteri like minions, but she's on the good side. They talk about her period in this first part too much. Why is it being brought up every 5 seconds? I don't know if Sarah J Maas is trying to like include Lydia like sticking up for herself and like the horrible like assault she's experiencing, and she's using her period as a way to like combat this assault. If so, it's not the best well placed aspect of the novel. And then once again, I must ask, where is Sarah Janet's editors? Where are they? Why is nobody telling her these things? Why is nobody explaining to her that a lot of things can be cut out to mitigate all of these frustrations that I and a lot of readers have? I've read some reviews before getting the book. I've read some reviews since starting to read, and it's just, we pretty much all have the same feelings about it. So I'm going to continue, but I think I really do need a little bit of a break, and I'm going to pick up The Familiar by Libra Verdugo and see where I end up with this one, because I just need to listen to something that I will hopefully enjoy. I'm sorry, I need to talk about something. Like, something happened in here that we didn't know for 3 books. It's fine, whatever. Love the addition of motherhood, I guess. And this character is like, they're all that matters. They didn't matter for 3 books. They didn't matter at all, actually, quite frankly. So why would they matter now? You know, where's her editor? Where is her editor? So as I expected, I flew through the first 100 pages of this. I was really, really in the mood for it. And I knew that just putting this off for the sake of continuing into A House of Flame and Shadow was just not going to be the best course of action. So I decided, let me just start this, get into it, get familiarized with it, and see how I enjoy it. So this is exactly the type of fantasy that I really, really love. I really like historical fantasy, but I also like historical fantasy that has some sort of like religious aspect looming in the background. So in this book we have Lucia, and Lucia is a scullion maid who helps this woman named Valentina. Valentina and her husband sort of don't have a lot going for them. They are not the richest of their society, and they often cannot return like dinner party favors and stuff like that until one day when Valentina discovers that Lucia has a bit of like miracle magic. So she's able to like fix things. Valentina uses that to her advantage to up her family's status. This has taken interest by someone who wants to get in the good favor of the king, basically. So his name is Antonio Perez, the disgraced secretary, of Spain's king. The king is basically desperate for any advantage in the war against England's heretic queen. So he's taking on people that have these like magical favors into this sort of competition. And Antonio Perez is like, I got the girl for you. And like I said, what I'm appreciating about this is not only that it's historical fantasy, it's also taking place in a time period and in a location in Europe that we don't normally see. Like, I don't think I've read a lot of like Spanish historical fantasy novels, so that's been really interesting as well, particularly how the Jewish heritage plays into this in Spain at the time. And as Lucia's notoriety grows, she is very, very, very scared that the Inquisition will look into her Jewish heritage and thus punish her for it. And where I'm at right now, she is getting the help of her aunt, who is pretending not to know her so that they can like sort of use that to their advantage to advance in this competition, and a person named Gillian Santangel, who is an immortal familiar whose own secrets could prove deadly for them both. I assume there's going to be some sort of like little romance there, so I'm very excited to get into this, and I'm really enjoying it. I really like Leigh Bardugo's writing, so it's nothing short of interesting for me, and I'm definitely enjoying this far more than House of Flame and Shadow. So I will definitely be continuing this and listening to it on audio, and I'll probably update you when I get another third of the way in, so around probably like the 200 page mark, give or take. Hello, please ignore my hair. I have my oil treatment in it because I'm about to take a shower, but I did want to talk about where I've gotten to in The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. So I got to about page 253 and chapter 38, and I've just decided I'm going to focus on this. I'm just going to finish it because it is a lot easier for me to read. I'm enjoying it a lot more because I just think Leigh Bardugo is just a better plotter in general in regards to like a comparison, and then also her writing is a lot more like substantial. I find that is one of the pluses for The Familiar. I find the writing to be really, really intriguing, but the story is also really interesting. Where we are at right now, Louisa is in these trials that she's been sort of set up to compete in order to work for the king, and a lot of like religiously like horrific stuff have been happening, and they have been recently attacked. Louisa was the only one that was able to save the people around them. And so we're sort of gathering that most of the contestants in this like battle are frauds in a sense, or more that they're all sort of equivalent to Louisa. Like, Louisa thought she wasn't the strongest competitor, and we're sort of seeing how a lot of the competitors have embellished their talents, embellished what they can do. So that's comforting for Louisa in a way. In addition to that, we understand now where this title comes from, and this comes out of the discussions between both Louisa and Santangel. Is that what he's called? Santangel. And you know, their relationship has gone to the next level, so I'm enjoying that part. It hasn't come like out of nowhere. They are very compatible with one another, and you can tell that Santangel cares about Louisa a lot. I'm enjoying pretty much everything in this book. I don't think necessarily it will be a 5-star. I think it's having interesting discussions about having a Jewish heritage in a mostly like Catholic society in Spain. The magic system makes sense. It's very like folksy, religious, which I think is very fascinating. What Santangel is very interesting as well. Like, his name is basically Saint Angel, right? So I think that he's really having an interesting like dichotomy to Louisa, who's supposed to be this like very pious like maid, right? So I'm enjoying their relationship, and I find it to be really interesting. We have about 130-ish pages, so I think what I'm going to do is just like after my shower, sit down, buckle up with this one, and just try to finish it today, and like probably come to you tomorrow with like an update on this, and then most of my attention can be focused on House of Flame and Shadow after that. Hello, so I am coming to you very content, very happy, and very excited to let you know that I finished The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo last night, like I planned. So I am just so happy that I ended up enjoying this book. I feel like this novel is really encompassing as to why people turn to Leigh Bardugo's stories, and it really highlighted her prose, her beautiful descriptions, while not to mention having really complex characters like a lot of her books. I found that Bardugo did a really excellent job at like weaving together fantasy, and specifically in a historical setting that examined the Spanish Inquisition and its colonial actions, and obviously highlighting the more religious oppression of this time in history. Our main characters in this book felt both familiar to characters we've seen before in Leigh Bardugo's stories, and sometimes different, and I really enjoyed having all of these different perspectives to read from. Additionally, Leigh Bardugo did call this like her most romantic novel, and so I was a little apprehensive about the romance going in. I wasn't sure what I was coming to read. I ended up falling for the romantic pairing by the end of the book, and appreciated how their story ended. If you love shadow daddy, white-haired, little suspiciously villainous love interest, I think you will find that here. There is just something that's so beautifully quiet about this book, and I would highly recommend it to people who love those like more quaint, slow, fantastical reads. It's definitely a slow book. If you don't like that, I would not recommend, but I do think it was really beautiful, quiet, and lovely. And so I give this 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm so happy to be in another Leigh Bardugo world. So now we just have to finish House of Flame and Shadow, but see ya later when I have something to update with House of Flame and Shadow. Hello, so as I was planning to sit down and read, I realized that I forgot to update you because I finished the second part of the book and I have some like little thoughts, and I realized that I forgot just because, quite frankly, I don't care about this book. So I'm doing this pain for this vlog, and that's it. So obviously Bryce had a secret plan all along for dealing with her father, and we, the reader, have no idea, even though we are in her POV. This is something Sarah J Maas does a lot, and I find it ridiculous. I find it I don't understand how this is acceptable. Like, if we have a character's POV, unless they're unreliable, which at this point I guess Sarah J Maas's main characters are, but unless they're unreliable, we should know what they're thinking because we are in their head. Why do I know how wet she feels when Hunt is around, but I can't know that she's planning on locking her father away in his room? Make it make sense. Then Bryce is a laser. Fascinating stuff. How does Bryce know everything all the time? That is also my question. Why is she such a breath of knowledge? I guess it's sort of explained because she like took care of the archives of Jezebel, but I feel like that's a bit like, how does she always figure things out? She's a mathematician over here. Connection between Cave of Princes and ACOTAR was kind of cool. I like that. Obviously ACOTAR is my favorite Sarah J Maas series, so any connection to ACOTAR I enjoy, despite the fact that I like what Sarah J Maas is doing with the series, which is why I'm obviously reading it. Like, I'm not reading it just for pain, you know? So this connection of the Cave of Princes that Bryce and Hunt need to go explore, and the ACOTAR caves was a very interesting and clever addition, I must say, Miss Sarah J Maas. Ending of the second part of this book was cool and expanded on what we know. The conversation with the Princes of Hell was cool. I thought that whole aspect of like how the worlds are connecting and how Bryce was able to talk to the Princes of Hell was a really cool addition. There are some stuff that I enjoy, okay? I'm not just a hater, but the faux feminist shit in this book is so cringe. Like, I can't take it. I can't take it. We get it. Okay, we get it, Sarah. Crescent City is emulating the extremities of this world. The use of women as, like, breeding grounds is wrong. Strong women prevail. Hello, so I just wanted to clarify something here because I was so, like, peeved by my experience reading this book that it clouded the way I was wording something. But I don't think that these conversations aren't important in literature. Like, obviously, we should be talking about the injustices that women face every day. But what I'm trying to say here is that it feels forced from Sarah J Maas. Like, she's talking about very simplified, like, white feminism. There's no intersectionality. These quips are kind of thrown in there cheaply. And it just feels like it's like, yeah, girl power, but there's so much more to girl power and so much more to the intersectionality of women today that this just feels like useless to me. It doesn't make a book inherently feminist because Bryce has an attitude and becomes a queen. You know what I mean? That's what I was trying to say. But those are my feelings for the second part of the book. I'm now in the third part, and it's mostly just tying things up, but in a very Sarah J Maas way where there's extra details being said while we're trying to tie things up. We should be getting this knowledge earlier on. Why am I learning about Braxton's backstory now? Doesn't make sense. I would love to finish it tonight, but I don't think so because just reading this book puts me to sleep. So I'm gonna go cook dinner and see you later. It's the end of the workday. It's about 6 o'clock and I am finishing this book tonight whether I like it or not. Not her literally making a motivating speech to the population of Midgard, talking about the death of millions of children and moving straight into a sex scene. Okay. Hello, so I did in fact finish House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas. Before we get into my review, let's just comment on my last comments. Spoilers obviously for the end of Crescent City, but how convenient that Ethan becomes the prime heir. obviously. Everyone just casually killing kings left and right, and everything is so conveniently fine about it. Not the sex scene after mentioning literal tragedies. They make fun of Bryce for having multiple plans in this book, which I think is Sarah J Maas's like tongue-in-cheek way to be like, I know my characters always know things, but it's like a little too much. And I know that Miss Sarah J Maas giggled, like she was nodding. She's like, this is a good line, but it's just annoying. Because it's like, if you can acknowledge it, like you obviously see the plot holes in your own story. Of course, they have a magical antidote and they will all be well and they'll all be fixed. And that's it. I don't even know how to express how I felt about this vlog without like rolling my eyes. Like, and then the magical Pegasuses came out. That was the most egregious crime committed in this book. The magical Pegasuses sprouted from the earth. Am I supposed to be titillated? Am I supposed to be content with this? What is this? Come on, 1 star. Get a better editor, Sarah, because your editor's not doing any favors. They're just saying, yes. This is egregious. You need a better editor, Miss Ma'am, please. So that's it. Let's go over what I thought about the books. So for the Atlas Complex, I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo ended up getting 4 stars. Definitely the favorite of the vlog, and I'm so happy I read this one. And then the book that I didn't think I was going to really enjoy anyways, probably my least favorite Sarah J Maas book of all time, but so far all of her endings I've hated, so it's not really any surprise. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this vlog. Please let me know down below your thoughts on these books. Did you like them? Did you hate them? This is a safe space. You can let me know if you loved House of Flame and Shadow. It's fine. If you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I do leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. And of course, because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It does wonders for my channel, makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things, but I will see you next time, okay? Bye!